Why would they stop now? Venezuela, power and the lie of peace. People keep asking, how could this happen in Venezuela? As if this is some shocking accident, as if this is new. But the real question is much simpler. Why would they ever stop? The so-called good people have failed to stop repeated actions of the evildoers. They always seem to come out after the fact, but never punish them peers for their crimes. I'm starting to believe they're part of the strategy. This has been going for centuries, yet colonization was never punished. Exploitation was never prosecuted. Slavery was never compensated. The people who were destroyed got nothing. And the people who did it, they became global powers and continue in quest to dominate the globe. So why would a system that worked so well suddenly decide to retire? Colonization never failed. It evolved. They took Australia. They took Africa, especially South Africa. They took the Caribbean. They took the Americas. They took the Pacific Islands. And what happened to them? Nothing. No trials. No reparations. No consequences. Instead, they refined the model. They learned that you don't need chains anymore. You don't need flags. You don't need permanent occupation. All you need is instability, division, and control of the narrative. Keep the source countries in chaos. Keep the people confused. Keep leadership under pressure. That way the extraction never stops. And let's address the so-called good people, the ones who always show up after the damage is done, after the destabilization, after the sanctions, after the displacement, after the bloodshed. They issue statements. They express concern. They promise investigations. Then they punish people after the crime has already reshaped the nation. They never stop the act. They only manage the aftermath. History shows this pattern clearly. The good people never intervene early enough to prevent exploitation, but they are very efficient at enforcing order once resistance appears. They do not stop wrongdoing in real time. They regulate chaos after it has served its purpose. And by repeating this cycle, by allowing the same actions to happen again and again, they are no longer neutral observers. They are participants. Because when injustice is predictable, repeatable, and unpunished, it is no longer failure. It is policy. For the people is the code word. Listen carefully to how these interventions are always framed. They say they're acting for the people. They separate the government from the people. They demonize leadership while pretending to protect civilians. They sell intervention as compassion. But here's the question no one asks. Have you ever seen them do this to themselves? Even when their countries are politically divided. When a foreign power threatens their leadership, the people close ranks immediately. Differences disappear. Unity becomes automatic. That tells you everything. Peace through strength versus peace through politeness. Here's where many of our nations misunderstand power. The US and other major powers believe in peace through strength, meaning, if we are strong enough, we get compliance without needing agreement. And whether people like it or not, that logic works. On the other hand, many of our countries, shaped by colonial trauma, try peace through negotiation, peace through kindness, peace through diplomacy alone. But negotiation only works when both sides fear the cost of disrespect. Kindness only works when it isn't mistaken for weakness. Strong nations don't collide with other strong nations unless they absolutely have to. They avoid it. They calculate it. They delay it. But when a nation is perceived as weak and it has something valuable, resources, land, influence, location, pressure becomes easy. Whenever, wherever, however. Real peace doesn't come from politeness. It comes from unity and strength, economic, regional, informational, institutional, because the strong respect the strong. Venezuela is not an exception. It's the pattern. Venezuela didn't suddenly fall into this situation. It was studied, mapped, penetrated, conditioned. When you hear claims that foreign powers knew what the president was wearing, eating, and where he was at, that's not magic intelligence. That's insider access. That means people inside the system were feeding information. In any serious sovereign nation, that level of collaboration would be considered treason. But betrayal thrives where it's tolerated. And tolerance doesn't appear overnight. It's trained. So yes, a few Venezuelans support what happened. But the greater responsibility lies with a society that allowed insider threats to live comfortably, openly, and without consequence. That is the real vulnerability. Watch who stood where. Now here's where people need to pay attention. When this happened, look at the global reaction. Some nations immediately praised it, others justified it, others stayed quiet, and others openly condemned it. Support and condemnation did not fall along moral lines. They fell along power blocks. Countries aligned with US influence either supported the action or carefully avoided criticizing it. Countries outside that bloc, China, Iran, Russia, and others, openly condemned it as a violation of sovereignty. Even within Europe, reactions were split. Some rejected it outright, others softened their language, and some individual political figures celebrated it. That tells you something important. This is not about democracy. It's not about human rights. It's about alignment and leverage. Blocs protect blocs. Strong alliances deter interference. Fragmented regions invite it. The Caribbean problem, no one wants to say out loud. People love to say Caribbean leaders are puppets. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Leaders don't become puppets in a vacuum. A divided people cannot protect leadership. A fragmented population cannot sustain resistance. We box ourselves into labels. Bayesian, Catitian, Nevesian, Jamaican, Haitian, Lucian, Tobayan, Grenadian, small identities thinking small thoughts, then wondering why global forces don't fear us. You cannot fight empires as islands in the mind. And then we say we're too small to do anything. No, we've been trained to think small. Diplomacy is a cage for the few who speak up. There are leaders who understand this reality. But those leaders must walk a diplomatic tightrope that others never face. Every word is measured, every sentence is filtered, every move is watched. Strength must be disguised as politeness. Resistance must wear a suit. That's not weakness, that's survival in a system designed to punish defiance. The real question. So no, this is not just about Venezuela. This is about a global system that learned it can act without consequence. It's about people trained to accept any help without asking why it's offered or what it costs later. The system will not stop. The only real question is this: when will the people stop being divided enough for it to work? Because unity is not idealism, unity is not emotional, unity is defense. And until that lesson is learned, they won't stop. Why would they?